So let me tell you the essence, the gist of our machine learning is to generalize, not to overfit. So think about that. Okay. So if you are going to say, this is what I'm going to say in the next few minutes. This is what the problem, the homework problem is about. If this is a practice term is testing, think twice. You are overfitting. And you are overfitting on a relatively small sample, right? Okay. So instead, you should generalize. You should understand the underlying principles, okay, and fundamentals. Okay, so I can only provide you guidelines, and I can provide you scope, not these, but the scope. Okay. So I won't. So this is where I'm actually will stop. Okay, so you won't see anything from LDUA from this slide after and after, right? Okay, so everything before. Okay, everything that has shown up on slides, okay, and through verbal discussions, class lecture discussions, okay, fill in. Okay. And but you've always seen the format in the practice midterm, and I posted a solution to the practice midterm today. Okay. The difficulty level and the kind of answers I'm looking for is very similar to the practice midterm. That's from one of the actual midterms I used a couple of years back. So that's why you may see some of the problems on nonlinear regression we haven't talked about, okay? But the format is the same. Okay? So this time, because in the past I followed the same order of the textbook, linear regression, nonlinear tree regression, and then classification, and then I realized, okay, so this is somewhat unfair to students who are working on classification problems rather than regression problems. So I now mingle these two. Okay, so classification, linear models, then nonlinear models. Okay, so that's how I proceed. And so I'm gonna give you a few very important points you definitely should know. Okay. But this is not exhaustive list. You should generalize, like I said, instead of trying to say this would be exhaustive list. I can guarantee it's not. Okay? And especially I'm talking now after I wrote my exams like 2 months ago, maybe 1 month ago. Okay, so you know I cannot come up with an exhaustive list right now. Okay. So, but I do know there are things that I think not from an exam taking point of view, but from an application point of view, what you definitely need to know. Okay. The most important part, there are several very important aspects. I don't say most important. Okay. So there are several very important aspects. One thing we should be crystal clear about is what is a model. Okay. And what do we mean by what estimation method? I use the term training. Okay. We talk about Ridge, Lasso, PLS, robust linear regression, blah, 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 etc. Okay. But they are all about the same model. It's a linear regression model. Whenever I say a linear regression model, you should instantly realize I'm talking about y is equal to beta 0 plus beta 1 times x1 plus beta 2 times x2, right? And if I say it is beta 2 times x2 squared, is this still a linear regression model? Still is. You are not limited to the original Excel spreadsheet. You can keep adding columns. As long as you are doing this beta times a column plus beta times another column, that's a linear regression model, right? Okay. And then it's the same model. So why do we come up with so many different things? Okay. They are all intended to estimate beta. Why do we need so many different estimation methods? That you absolutely need to know. What's the rationale behind it? What are the pros and the cons of each of these, right? Okay. Let me just say this, right? So ordinary least square, that's the most widely used. That's like the default standard approach, right? Why people use it? Can you tell me why? Simple. Simple and very importantly.
Based on statistics. Based on underlying statistics are good basics.
But others also have very strong statistical foundations. But there's an advantage, okay?
Computational cost.
That's an advantage, but maybe not the most important one.
Minimize bias.
What?
Minimize bias.
No.
There.
No.
Do you think that?
It's the same linear model, right? Oh, well, actually, you are getting close. Because in addition to just to tell you what the beta is, tells
What it
you
means.
the standard error. You can do t-test on individual efficient. You can do f-test on the entire model, right? So that's why OLS is fast and it comes with a statistical test and various diagnostic tools. So that's the standard. Why do we do robust linear regression? Yes, to mitigate the impact of outliers, right? So, but when I'm looking at IMSE or R square, of course you have to know what is IMSE and R square, right? Okay, so that's the second most important part I'm going to talk about, right? How do you measure the predictive power of a model, right? So that's the second most important. I'm still staying on the first one, right? Okay. Revisiting the lecture slides, we saw seems like a robust linear regression model is doing a worse job in terms of R squared and IMSE than a ordinary mixed square. And it's also more complicated. So why are we concerned with robust linear regression? One of you already mentioned that we want to be more robust against the existence of outliers, right? There are outliers in the data set, and we want to arbitrarily throw them out. I still want to improve them, but then concerned with the sensitivity of the model to outliers, so I use robust linear regression. Okay. And now why look at the R squared and IMSE robust linear model is worse? Do you conclude it's worse? These are the type of questions that are important in practice, right? Let me ask you, is this a fair comparison? Keep in mind,
No, because it's different capacity, different value for
it's a, yes, exactly. So it's the same purpose as I'm giving you the test. Okay? Whether you're a good student or not, whether you have understood the concept well or not, does not depend on a particular outcome of a particular user. Okay? Especially when your study is tailored towards this particular thing, right? Okay. When you use ordinary least square, your objective is specifically to minimize the IMSE on this particular data set. Then fail game, right? So you are expected to behave to perform better. But why do we use robust linear regression? Because everything is about generalize. We hope when we generalize, when you are facing the brave new frontier, right? You are given new data set, and the new data set has outliers. You expect the robust linear regression to perform better. They are ordinary mixed square, right? It's just that we're talking about something that we cannot readily test. Okay? So that's why from the textbook examples, if you're only focusing on IMSE, it's not doing a better job. But like I said, ordinary mixed square is designed to minimize MSE. So in some sense, it's fair to say, I don't know if one of you already said that. Okay, so RMS, ordinary mixed square, among all these estimation methods, this is the one that overfit the most. Okay, it does not consider anything else. The sole purpose is to minimize the RMSE on the training data set, period. Okay, so it's overfitting most. Okay. Robust linear regression is introduced to deal with outliers, right? So that's a point I want to emphasize. We have such, for the same model, I'm not even talking about different models, right? Nonlinear versus, I'm talking about the same model, right? Why we need to have so many different packages, right? Okay. Robust linear regression is when you are concerned with outliers. Okay. Then what about partial least square?
Multiple years.
Yes, deal with multi-collinearity. Okay. But this may tell me much, right? What is multicollinearity? If I know, then I understand exactly what you mean, right? But in layman's terms, yes, when you have highly correlated predictors, what are you supposed to do, right? So in practice, many folks would just do a pre-processing to say, I'm gonna identify the highly correlated predictors, such as the correlation coefficient higher than 0.9, and I'm gonna remove them. This is what people do. Most of the time, what people do on everyday basis is not the correct thing to do. We all know that, right? Okay. No matter how many advices we get from our parents, teachers, colleagues, and even our children, we may still do it. Okay. So various reasons. Okay. So that's not what we are supposed to do. You should not arbitrarily delete a predictor simply because it's highly correlated with another one. Okay. At least if you want to do that, you should try different ways. You delete this one, you leave that one, and vice versa, see what's the difference. Okay. Instead, a much better, a more principled, and also easier approach, because you let a package handle it, right, is to use partial least square. Because partial least square would produce uncorrelated components, right? But partial least square introduced something called model tuning parameter. Do you remember what is the model tuning parameter for partial least square? Yes, number of components. Okay. And there's another method called known as a PCR, principal component regression. PLS is the preferred method. So PCR is introduced for legacy reason because PCA is very famous. Okay. But indeed, if you are doing linear model training, you should do PLS, not PCA. And so you have to tune the model, and that's a cost you pay. Nothing is free. So it helps you deal with multi-collinearity, but you pay a cost. The cost comes in two ways. First, you have to tune the model, right? And second, you no longer have the t-test, f-test, etc. to help you perform statistical tests. And also the model to interpret the model, because now you have components, you have to recover the model, and it's less intuitive. Of course, you can still write down the coefficient for each individual predictor, but then it's no longer as simple to explain as the previous one. So it's partial least square. And then we have the family of elastic length, right? So the special instances are ridge regression and elastic, right? And this family introduced a very important concept that we're going to see again and again, nonlinear models. Okay? And the idea is to introduce a so-called regularization term or penalty term. These are called penalizing methods. Okay, so why do we introduce a penalty? Anyone knows?
To shrink the coefficients.
What?
To shrink the coefficients.
Why do we want to shrink the coefficients?
To avoid overfitting.
What?
To avoid overfitting.
Yes, to avoid overfitting. Okay.
Feature selection.
What? Yes, and the last will also help us do feature selection. Right? So you don't have to arbitrarily remove correlating predictors to nature. So that's why it's going to do the job. Okay? So the idea about regularizing a model is to control the behavior of the model so it does not fluctuate too much. It does not become overly sensitive to the training data, right? So to reduce overfitting and reduce overfitting basically means you are going to reduce model variance, right? So now this is a concept of model bias versus model variance. So anyone knows what is model bias? Can we get rid of model bias? Can we?
Not without the cost of increasing the model variance.
Yes. That's a correct answer. That's more or less a diplomatic answer. Right? Yeah. But the correct one, good point. So you are pointing out that one of the correct ways to look at this problem, right? So, well, diplomatically, you should never be cornered into a situation to answer yes or no, right? So, I would say the question is, somewhat ear posed, right? So, like I said, for engineering, for science, we have to be very precise about the question to ask, right? Okay. So when I say model bias can get rid of it, okay, my first question is actually, with your model predictors, do you think you have taken into account all the factors affecting the data generation activity? If you miss important aspects in data generation, then no way. You simply will have model bias, no matter how you make up your model, right? No model would be able to correctly describe the data generation mechanism if you miss important factors used in the data generation, right? Now, if you tell me that, yes, my data is generated using all the predictors, some of them may be redundant, some of them may be noise, I simply have to confuse you, right? Okay. But all the predictors I use to generate the response are included in the data set. Now, that's a well-controlled lab environment for me to answer this question. Can I get rid of model bias? So, if I'm working with linear regression model, then the question is very simple. No. How could I ever know this is a linear function on these given predictors? I could keep expanding my predictor data sheet, right? Okay, so I could keep adding crazy terms. Second, quadratic terms, cubic terms, and interaction terms. How could I know I should do a sine x1? How could I know I should do a logarithm x1, right? So there's so many different computations. You cannot be exhaustive. But mathematically speaking, okay, for example, okay, so the problem is I don't know how to say the last name of that mathematician. Okay. Weierstrass or something. Okay, so he has proven a theorem to say that any continuous function can be approximated, okay, to any precision you want using a polynomial. Okay, you can just keep going to higher order polynomial. So for any continuously differentiable function, you can do that. So that means you can indeed get rid of model bias in the limit. Okay, but that's just a mathematical result. So the concept of reducing mathematical bias to zero, you should say zero, not equal to. Okay. You can say as small as you want, that's doable. Okay, that would come with extremely high cost of overfitting and overly inflated model difference. Right? So that's why we are careful about how complex or how sensitive our models are, and we introduce a penalty parameters. That's another tuning parameter. So when you are shrinking the coefficients, what you do is to make your model to not jump too much when you have change in the predictors, right? Do not over-predict, right? Okay. Do not overreact, right? So that tends to reduce model variance, and not to mention with LASSO, you also reduce the number of features you include in the model, right? Okay, so that's a rationale behind this class of penalized answers, which is extremely important. I would say if you have to say which one is more important, dealing with correlated regression coefficients versus this tuning model complexity. So the penalized idea of introducing penalty, introducing the regularization terms is more fundamental. So this covers a class of linear model training methods, right? For chapter 1, right? So then it's extremely important for you to understand what is cross-validation, how it's performed, and there's a computational cost involved. And we already see repeated cross-validation, right? What do we mean? Okay. So we use cross-validation so far for two purposes, right? One is to get a more objective, more reliable estimate of the true predictive power of the model you train, right? Okay. Right? Okay. Without a test data set. And second, using this more objective estimate of the predictive power of a model to do what? When you do PLS, when you do NASO, what do you need to do? Tuning it, right? You need to tune it. So we use cross-validation to produce a more reliable estimate of INSC or R square. So we can tune the model, right? So you need to understand this. And that's pretty much what I have in my mind for linear regression models. And of course, the concept of model bias versus model variance, right? Okay. It's a very important, among the most important one. So that's for linear regression. And okay, so I forgot to talk about the data pre-processing. So data pre-processing, so once we have talked about centering, scaling, right? Okay, and that's easy. Okay. But the one that most people get confused about is box calls. Okay. So you should know why we do box calls. Anyone knows? To remove skewness, right? Because the model network is roughly symmetric predictors. Okay. And can you apply box calls on any predictors? No. Numerical, okay? So if it's an integer reading, you can still use it. Okay. Integer readings are okay, but if it's a binary, 0, 1, or another. So for integer readings, I should also be careful because they are integers. No matter how you transform them, okay, so the effect you may have, okay, is limited. Okay. So unless you have, like, for example, if you see test scores 0 to 100, they are integers, but you can look at this as a continuous spectrum, so you can use it. But if you see a rating from 0, 1, 2, 3, then it's not going to much. With a continuous one, so as long as it's a numerical one, can I use box calls? No? So what should I do? For certain predictors.
Non-zero variance.
Yes, you should have everything as positive, strictly positive, which is easy to do, just offset it, right? The reason is we may end up with taking logarithm or taking the square root, right? So you don't want to have negative values or 0. Okay, so that's a box calls. And another, so scaling, centering, and the box calls, they are only applied to a single predictor, right? Only to a single predictor, one by one. So for the box calls, we are gonna get 1 lambda for each predictor, right? Okay. So PCA is applied to multiple predictors at once, right? Okay. So you should know what is a square plot of a PCA. You know what is a square plot? That shows the percentage of variations you get from each component, right? Going like this. So the first most important one explains the most variation in your data set, right? So PCA, people use it to explore the, you can call effective dimension in the data set. You are given a spreadsheet with 200 columns. You want to know exactly, do I really have to store this huge data set with 200 columns? Okay. So PCA is telling you how many columns you actually need. So you can think of it as an encoding mechanism. Okay. So if I already have, say, 1 billion entries, and you give me another 1,000 columns, so I say, that's too huge a data set. So would it be possible, instead of storing 1,000 columns, maybe if I just store 10 columns, and that would still contain most of the information I have from the data set? Yes, PCA can help you do that. So you just kind of compute the components and look at the sweet plot. And if you find out the top 10 components already explain 99% of the variation in the data set, you can just save the 10 components. And now your data set goes down from 1,000 columns to 10 columns, and you have most of the information. So PCA is mostly used in this method. But for our predictive modeling, PCA is not really that useful. Just to tell you how much information you actually have in this gigantic data set. So that's PCA. So that's a pre-processing step. And also, don't forget about box call. box plot, right? So looking at these median bar edges, top edges, down edges, what they mean, right? You can do that. And so data pre-processing and linear classification. And obviously, because I said I'm gonna stop here for midterm, so you don't have to be worried about the specific linear classification models. But there are plenty of materials to test you, right, for linear classification. From a writing exam, from the perspective of writing exam questions, this is the easiest part. Okay, just to give you a confusion matrix, I can ask you what is the PPV from it, what is the PA from it, and equally importantly, you need to know what does PPV mean, right? What does PPV mean?
Ability to predict cost.
So it's a conditional probability. So it says if the test, I use a medical test example, right? If the medical test comes back as positive, what is the probability that this person actually has the disease? So that's a conditional probability statement, right? Okay. Right. So there are so many different metrics. So all of them, right? Okay. So that's it. And okay. So then it's come on to, so these are the statistics. And now we talk about 3 plots, right? So calibration curve, ROC curve, and the Dichter curve. And if I have to prioritize, say you only have the last 30 minutes to work these 3, I will start with the ROC curve. Okay. And then you can look at either calibration or Dichter curve. But ROC curve is, first of all, it's easier to understand, right? Okay. And secondly, it's used so often. Right? So the ROC curve is what you absolutely need to understand. And then you also need to understand what the calibration curve and Dichter curves are telling you and how they are plotted. So that's about linear classification. So and it's a closed book, closed notes, but you can bring in 1 page of one letter size, so 8.5 by 11 inch, right? So you can write or type, okay, if you want. Whatever, on both sides, you can use a backlit fine as if you want. So I actually have students in the past, okay, who working with a reference sheet, and amazingly, he could handwrite in font size like I would say at most of 4. And he fills every square inch, not square inch, every so.
So basically, what for the exam, like you said, if I understand correctly, it's basically covering everything up through chapter 11, correct?
Not through chapter 11. Okay, so it's a chapter.
I mean,
well,
what we've covered in order up to through chapter 11. Is that accurate?
chapter 11 is the first chapter in the classification part.
Right.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So in other words, not 12.
Not 12. Not 12.
If I understand.
Not 12. Yes. Right. So what I want to say about the reference sheet is, okay. So if you can compress all the slides into 1 page, you're welcome to do that. But how useful will it be? Okay, like I said, starting, okay, any concept similar to machine learning, right? Machine learning, we are human learning, right? Learning, the most important point is to generalize from fundamental principles rather than trying to memorize stuff, right? Okay, so reference sheet, the only purpose is to help you get a peace of mind so you don't panic because I forget something, right? Okay, so important facts, you can write it down, right? So it gives you a peace of mind, but it should be a summary of the important elements we have learned in the class, okay? So I have seen people in the past who walked in with 1 page, but they wrote in font 13 or 14, and only took 3/4 of a page, okay? And they did terribly because they overfit. So it's pretty much, I didn't look at them in great detail, but it's pretty much Anything they missed in homework or in practice midterm, just write it down. They don't remember these things. Okay, so just write these down. They don't try to go over the materials itself. And the person who actually walked in with this some tall reference sheet, he told me he ended up not referring to the cheat sheet throughout the exam. Right? So it's a process you digest. So that's you can use a calculator if you want. Okay, it's basically the most calculation, most complex calculation we do is for the PPB. I would say to calculate the PPB. I'm not saying it's going to be a problem to calculate the PPB. I'm saying most complex will be better. So you can use a calculator you want. If you want to use your cell phone as your calculator, okay, so you can do that, but you are prohibited from using it as a communication tool, right? So if I catch you, it could be a huge problem for you. Okay. You don't want to be in such a situation. It's totally unnecessary. Just want to. So I know many of you are seriously concerned with exam grade and your final grade. Okay. One thing I can guarantee you from my own experience, if you get a C, it could be more or less a problem. Okay? But if you get a B, B plus, or A minus, etc., and for graduate level classes, it doesn't really make much of a difference. And just to think about for graduate level for this time, we are no longer interviewing for entry level position. Okay? So when people interviewing here, okay, if the best piece of evidence you can provide for what you want to talk about is you get a straight A after so many years, you basically kill the conversation, right? Right. People always want to ask you what kind of real-world problems you have worked on, what are the data sets you have worked on, what are the hurdles you overcome, what are the interesting things you found, right? So these conversations, you can only be prepared for them after you have done serious work using real data sets, not starting for some kind of exam. Okay? Getting A plus or whatever. That's something we totally. So I worked in the industry before, so I have been. I think I did it for twice, right? So twice I have been asked by my manager to help him review resumes. So at that time it's a bad time, so it's very hard economically. So for one position, we easily look at the 200 resumes. So that's a pretty similar. I can tell you, okay, don't remember anyone whose GPA is. And as a matter of fact, people don't put their GPA on resume. If you put your GPA on resume, you make yourself look like a high school student or undergraduate student at best. Okay, never talk about your GPA. You will list the subject you have studied, right? It is proven, but you never write for books for the students, reporting students. You never write about it. Okay. So rather, you write more about the project you have worked on, okay, the techniques you apply, that kind of stuff, and these provide materials for interview conversations. So don't be overly concerned with just the grades and do silly stuff. That's the point I'm trying to tell you. So you have the entire class, 12.5 hours for the exam, so no time pressure. And with a reference sheet, I don't see any reason you will panic. Okay. So in the past, I have classmates who said I panic because I have to work in with nothing else. So I panic. So I was very nervous, etc. I don't think with plenty of time and the cheat sheet, I don't think there's any reason to panic. Any other question about the midterm? Okay. So for the practice midterm, I have the solution posted. If you have any specific question about any particular answer, email me. I will do my best to get back to you in time, but I will be traveling to a conference on Saturday to Wednesday, so my response time would be longer than my typical response time. So I apologize for that. But I will do my best to reply to you. So that's what I want to say about it. Good?
The TA is available for questions also.
Yes, of course. Right. So regular office hours for her, and I also have our office hours on Thursday. I will be back by then, so I also have my regular office hours. Good.